We spoke late last week with a group of voters from all 7 battleground states to discuss the election, their outlook for America's future, and more. How many of you voters are going to cast your ballots for Donald Trump? Okay. Mary, you raised your hand. You are in the very important state of Arizona. What's driving your decision?
Well, my decision is I live right on the border in Yuma, Arizona. And I know in the last 3.5 years, we have had just horrible, horrible problems in Yuma with a lot of illegal immigration coming through. Our economy is awful. Yuma's unemployment is 16%. So the economy is a big factor as well. Just a combination of things. Our groceries have gone up. Just everything has just really gone downhill in the last 3.5 years for us in Yuma and Arizona completely.
Cole, you are in Georgia, also a very key state. Why do you plan to vote for Donald Trump?
For me, I do not look necessarily at the candidate specifically, but just the broader party and the direction they're hoping to take America. For me, some of the top 3 issues would definitely be our economy, immigration, and then I would also say, as we've come out of the pandemic, just seeing how the 2 different political parties handled the pandemic. I think Kamala Harris and the Democrats are a little bit too extreme on the issue of abortion. I do not support the idea of allowing abortion at 20 weeks of pregnancy, and certainly not with no restrictions. And so I would prefer candidates who are more aligned with my pro-life position.
Mike, you're in Nevada. You said you will be voting for Donald Trump, but he makes it hard. He makes it hard for you to feel good about that vote. Can you explain what you mean?
There's parts of Donald Trump which I admire and parts of Donald Trump which I cringe, for lack of a better term. And, in the debate when he said, they just asked him, January 6th, would you change anything? I think he had an opportunity there to step up as a leader and take some ownership. People went to jail. I think that would have showed a lot of courage for him to do that. So I like things on the economy, tightening up inflation. Yes, and yes. I think those are the primary issues in this election. As you get into the periphery and just how he conducts himself, sometimes it's hard to put a Trump side in the front yard based on some of his behaviors.
But you're still doing it. Why?
Well, because I'm a fan of the economy and a fan of success, right? I think there has been no driver in the driver's seat in our economy for the last 3.5 years. And I think we've suffered mightily for it. That drives a lot for me. I don't have to like people personally. I don't have to agree with some of the stuff they do, but I have to, kind of go for the greater good.
Christopher, you are in North Carolina. How are people doing there amidst the fallout from this storm? And what makes you an enthusiastic Republican right now?
I've always been an enthusiastic Republican since I voted for Ronald Reagan in 1980. I've been fortunate enough to be part of Trump's ground campaign in 2016, and I met some very amazing people. I really, really like the maturation process that he's gone through. He got his feet wet in 2016. He learned the hard way. He got tagged a few times. He stepped in it a lot. It's easy to look in the rearview mirror and say coulda, shoulda, and woulda. But when you're in the moment, you make the best decisions you can at the time. I trust him to do that. I trust him to make a decision.
But do you, Christopher, ever feel uncomfortable, like Mike said he did, with things that Donald Trump says?
At some times I have, but in this day and age, with what we're being faced with on the global stage, and the not so nice characters that will look for a weak spot in the United States of America to bring her to her knees, I'd rather have in in the ocean full of bloody water shark, great white sharks, I'd rather have an orca in there than Flipper protecting me. And I know Donald Trump will get in there and he will fight for us. He may not say what we want to hear, but he will execute on our behalf. And it's obvious. The man nearly died. He took a bullet for us. He got back up again. And you cannot dismiss that. And his instinct was to say, fight. So that right there tells me this man doesn't have to be there.
How many of you are planning to vote for Vice President Harris in November? I want to dive into exactly why that is. Linda, and then Kathy, why are you supporting Vice President Harris for president?
I've first voted for Reagan in '80 as well. And all of my voting years, I was told character counts. And as I look at Donald Trump, I either have to say character counts and not vote for him, or say it doesn't count anymore. I did vote for him in 2016. I voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and I will vote for Kamala Harris this year.
That's interesting that you voted for Trump, then Biden, now you're going to vote for Harris. These are very different people. What is driving your decision now?
I have listened to Kamala Harris and the things she has to say. I truly believe she cares about people. I think her life shows she cares about people. And she truly wants to work to make our day in and day out lives better now. And I care about now, but I have grandchildren and I care about what kind of a world we're going to give them to build on as they become people to vote in the next few years. And again, I go back to character counts, and Donald Trump is a proven liar. He has said and done too many things that I think should be disqualifying, from January 6th to those poor people in Springfield, Ohio. They must just be terrified.
Kathy, you're in Pennsylvania. Why are you voting for Vice President Harris?
I hear and see the fears that people have just contemplating another 4 years with Donald Trump. I don't have anything that I can think of that I would say I agree with him on. And I, like Linda, would say, to me, character counts. So Donald Trump is a no for me.
What about you, Mauricio? You are joining us from Wisconsin.
January 6th to me is beyond unacceptable. That's sacred territory that was stormed. He riled up that. It was not a protest. That was an insurrection. The plans were to overthrow a legitimate election. That will never be tolerated in my viewpoint.
Do you believe that Vice President Harris, if she is elected president, that she will be very different from Joe Biden? Or do you see her continuing the issues and agenda that he has pursued for the past 4 years?
I'm sure she's probably a little bit more liberal, but she would accept the results if she lost. And that's big to me.
Linda, back to the original question I asked Mauricio as well. As a Harris supporter, do you believe that the vice president would continue Joe Biden's policies, or do you think she has a different vision for the country?
I think she will do some of the things President Biden has done. And some of the things Biden has done has helped our country quite a bit. I would like to hear more specifics of what she plans to do, but I would much rather see someone want to give tax breaks to the middle class than the most wealthy people in our country, which is what Trump wants to do.
I just wanted to follow up on this idea of how future President Harris might or may not be different than President Biden. And I'll be honest with you, I do not envy Kamala Harris, because she has to defend President Biden, and she also has to kind of thread the needle of following his policies, maybe making some of her own. But listen, there have been some failures in this administration, and I think whether you're on the left or the right, you can hopefully see that. And for me, some of those things off the top of my head were, we did not have a good withdrawal from Afghanistan. Prices are through the roof for consumers, and we can debate how we got at that. But at the end of the day, inflation is out of control, and there have been a record number of illegal border crossings under the Biden administration. And so I understand that she has to appeal to the base, and she doesn't want to alienate any Biden voters. But it's very shocking to me that there's not one thing that she could think of that she would have done differently than President Biden.
Show of hands, who is concerned about the issue of abortion and reproductive health care going into this election? Okay. Mary, you're not raising your hand. You live in a state where abortion access is currently permitted up to 15 weeks. You're good with that where it is? It's not a motivating factor for you, even though abortion will be on the ballot in Arizona?
The way I feel is that I'm more concerned about women's health. And I think that we need to concentrate on prevention of unplanned pregnancies, not using abortion as birth control. That's the way I feel. I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I think that that's what it should be. I think 17 weeks is a good amount of time. Now, of course, just like everyone else had said, rape, incest, problems with the pregnancy, things like that. Of course, I can understand having an abortion and you find out later in your pregnancy that something's wrong with the baby. Okay, that's a different story.
Would you, Mary, like to hear candidate Donald Trump and candidate J.D. Vance echo your beliefs? They avoid talking about the specifics. You were very specific at 17 weeks. Would you like the candidates to be that specific?
At the federal level, and the reason why it was brought back to the states is that different states have different feelings. California is much more liberal than Arizona or Texas or Oklahoma or Georgia or other areas of the country. And just like Trump said, look at Kansas. Kansas has become more liberal than they used to be. Mm-hmm. And that's very true. But the main focus is women's health. Women and what's taught in schools, nothing anymore.
Kathy, you raised your hand. This is an issue that's important to you.
It is. I have daughters and granddaughters, and I would hope that the decision of something that serious would be allowed to be made by them and their healthcare provider, not by someone sitting on a bench or in a boardroom or wherever, making that decision for them to be able to or not to be able to control their own body. And it's not realistic to believe if you like this liberal law better, everyone can just move where they want to. Those things just aren't realistic.
You can see the extended interview on our YouTube page or our website.